Anyways, back to the Raptors three-point shooting, like you were mentioning. So the Raptors are like a very average team in terms of their three-point shooting. Like they're 15th in made threes, 16th in attempts, and 14th in three-point percentage. But I was looking at it. If you take away Fred and Gary, who are, arguably, I guess, the two best shooters on this team.
Yep. Not
the
even
rest
close.
of the team is averaging 6 made threes per game this season.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
On 31% shooting, and 31% would basically be the last ranked Wizards, who are at 30%.
So this also includes OG?
Yes. So this includes everybody except for Fred and Gary. They are but that's it. But that's it. When Fred is not when Fred and I think during a stretch here in January and February, Fred and Gary were like amongst the league leaders in made threes.
Yeah.
But if those two aren't giving you the three-point shooting, there's literally no shooting on this roster. And you probably didn't even need the stat because, like,
no, but I mean, that stat really hammers it home.
But and I guess that's goes to the next concern is that I see a lot of people saying now, the team never really addressed that issue.
Yes.
At the trade deadline, the lack of shooting. They instead decided to trade for Thad Young. I'm sure they had conversations to acquire other guys. And like you mentioned, this wasn't like a roster that was one piece away from competing for a championship. They're going to make more additions in the summer. But like, for me, like, forget about like getting a really good center or anything else. Like, they need to get like 2 shooters at least on this team.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a problem because you also have to bring in guys who can shoot but also be able to play defense in Nick's system.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can just bring in guys who are shooting like 40% from 3 who aren't actually going to play when they get here. So for me, that's the biggest thing for the offseason.
I agree. And the thing to me is, I'm not sure why. Because look, if we can see this, the front office clearly can see this, right? They're literally basketball geniuses. The thing is, though, when you look at the recent string of acquisitions, right? Even small things like DJ Wilson, they chose him, right? Even small things like going back to training camp, who's going to get the last spot on the roster? Right? I guess technically it was the 14th spot, but that was all they're carrying for tax reasons. So last spot on the roster they were choosing. They had a shooter in Sam Dekker. I'm not saying Sam Dekker would have changed things. I'm trying to say this is reflective of their mindset. Who did they choose? Isak Bonga, who, as I've said this before, we were at practice and Nick Nurse literally came over to Isak Bonga and handed him the Nick Nurse pill and said, "You need to start from the basics, son."
How's his 905 three-point shooting stats?
Good. Yeah, they're good. Yeah, they're actually pretty good.
Okay, so it's working.
No, I called him LaBonga James at the G League level.
Okay,
because he really, when you watch a G League game, he looks really great.
So the pill is still working.
Sure, yeah. The pill is definitely effective. That's what we want to put out there today on the show. But like you look at Scotty Barnes, Delano Banton, Justin Champagnie, those guys were not like shooters at the college level, right? And you just look at the recent string acquisitions outside of Gary, which was swapping a shooter in Norm for a slightly better shooter in Gary, right? That's the only real shooting they've really acquired. So my theory is this, though. Do you think the Raptors used this year to look at like, okay, we clearly need 6'9" forwards. They're very valuable in the NBA. They genuinely are, right? Do you think they just looked at the roster and said, we're going to get as many of these guys as we want, do a little trial period, and then keep like 3 or 4 of them, and then the rest of them we can actually go back and acquire the more easily replaceable pieces, such as shooters?
I actually think you're onto something because I do think the Raptors just identified like a particular type of player and the particular type of playing style that they want to go with this season.
Yeah.
And we heard Bobby say this before the trade deadline, that this is not the final iteration, that they're still going to make changes. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they shift the roster and the style of play a little bit next season. Like if anything, this is the year to take a look.
Sure.
Like even though it's so disastrous right now with the 2 straight losses, like there's still all the positives of what they've seen from the core guys.
There's lots of positives.
So when they go into the offseason, I do think there is going to be a slight shift. And clearly, like you mentioned, like whatever we're talking about, like they've talked about it over and over again, like they already know all of this, is that they prioritized the defense. They prioritized the flexibility, right? And they're almost like, okay, we'll figure out the shooting after we figure out who our core guys are going to be.
Yeah.
How we're going to build around. So they probably think shooting is something that they can go out and get, whether it's in free agency or trade. But I just need them to do it because the offense is just
painful. Say this out again. I couldn't believe it, man.
Yeah. So if you remove Fred and Gary's 3-point shooting, the rest of the Raptors roster is averaging 6 made threes this season per game.
Wow.
31% shooting.
And that includes OG.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
And then this, by the way, and this is in a year where Fred is shooting He's made more threes than anybody else other than Steph Curry. And in terms of total made threes, Gary Trent Jr. is 16th in the NBA. Gary Trent Jr. has made more threes than like a lot of he's made more threes than Devin Booker, Zach LaVine, CJ McCollum.
The Raptors are an average team overall in 3-point shooting, 15th in made threes, 14th in 3-point percentage, but that's being completely propped up by just Fred and Gary.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing else there. And like, again, we don't need these stats. Like we all watch the games.
Yeah.
Like there's been no free fries at McDonald's. It's been quiet lately.
Tough.
Yeah. That's how I know.
Well, because your mom's texting you?
That's right. Like it's been quiet. The WhatsApp's been quiet. And I just need them to go get some shooters. Like
I agree. Yeah.
Just
or you know what? No, in the meantime, with OG out, one of my suggestions is you're gonna have to force some of these guys to shoot more threes. Even if they're not great 3-point shooters, you are not turning down 3-point shots.
Yes, there's value in just getting the shots up.
Thad Young at the end of those 2 shot clock scenarios, I'm not even talking about that. That's just a basketball play. You have to get a 3 up there. But I'm talking about Chris Boucher. I want to see Chris at 3 or 4 threes a game now. I want to see Precious take 3 threes a game. If Utah comes in the game, take a damn 3. You know, like, but he's not going to come in that game. So, you know, but even Malachi, come in and take your shots. Why can't Malachi hit a 3?
Take your shots.
Why was he 0 for 5? I was watching the game. I was like, oh, wow, Malachi's actually coming in doing some
and
stuff.
He's like 2 for 10.
Check the box score, 2 of 10 from the field, 0 of 5 from 3, 0 assists. And I was impressed.
Take the shots. I thought we had 5 Rodmans on this team that would just grab every offensive. Remember that week when every player was Dennis Rodman?
I saw someone in the chat just said Raptors should stop shooting the 3. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You can't win in the NBA without shooting threes. And second of all, this team will not score, period. Because it's not like they make up for it with the scoring skill set in the interior. Which is another thing to the Raptors. It's just they have not valued like shot creation either. They've just punted on. They've just said, we're going to defend and counter you, okay? This is a Jose Mourinho team.